Hello and welcome. You're watching Trending Daily, and I'm your host, Makhdoom Shahabuddin. Today, we are witnessing two very different stories unfolding in South Asia. One story is about silence, ambiguity, and economic uncertainty. The other is about visibility, confidence, and strategic projection. On one side, India finds itself under growing international pressure over its energy ties with Russia, while its government maintains a conspicuous silence. On the other hand, Pakistan is making headlines for its expanding defense footprint and rising credibility on the global stage. Together, these developments tell a powerful story about shifting dynamics in the region and about how choices in energy policy, diplomacy, and defense strategy can shape national trajectories. Let us begin with India. Ladies and gentlemen, a major shift in global power politics is placing New Delhi in an uncomfortable spotlight. As pressure mounts over India's continued purchases of Russian crude oil, the Indian government's silence is raising serious questions both at home and abroad. Energy is the lifeline of India's economy. It fuels factories, transportation, agriculture, and households. Any disruption to affordable energy supplies has immediate consequences for inflation, growth, and social stability. What is being framed internationally as a diplomatic maneuver could translate domestically into higher fuel prices, rising food costs, and financial strain for millions of Indians. This controversy intensified after US President Donald Trump issued an executive order removing a punitive 25% tariff on Indian imports. However, this rollback came with a significant condition. Trump claimed that India had agreed to stop buying Russian crude oil. The executive order also established a monitoring mechanism. US officials will track whether India resumes direct or indirect purchases from Russia. If India is found to be continuing these imports, the tariffs could be reimposed. Trump presented this move as a part of Washington's broader strategy to economically isolate Russia over the Ukraine conflict. Yet, despite the magnitude of this claim, the Indian government has not confirmed that Prime Minister Narendra Modi or any Indian official committed to halting Russian oil purchases. Instead, New Delhi has chosen a carefully calibrated silence. The Ministry of External Affairs has reiterated that India's energy decisions are guided by national interest and domestic economic needs. Officials emphasize diversification of supply rather than submission to external pressure. India's Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal has stated that crude oil imports are directed by market forces and private buyers, not by trade agreements or political deals. For many analysts, this is deliberate ambiguity. India is neither confirming Trump's version of events nor openly challenging it. This silence allows Washington's narrative to circulate internationally without direct contestation, while New Delhi quietly preserves flexibility. Why would India adopt such an approach? The answer lies in economics. India imports more than 80% of the oil it consumes. After Western sanctions were imposed on Moscow, Russian crude began selling at deep discounts. India seized this opportunity, dramatically increasing purchases and saving billions of dollars in energy costs. These discounted imports have played a crucial role in keeping domestic fuel prices relatively stable and supporting India's post-pandemic economic recovery. Abruptly ending these purchases would come at a very heavy cost. A State Bank of India analysis warns that stopping Russian oil imports could raise India's annual oil import bill by 9 to 12 billion US dollars. That increase would widen the current account deficit, place pressure on foreign exchange reserves, and strain the national budget. Higher import cost means less fiscal space for infrastructure, healthcare, education, and social welfare. There is also the issue of global prices. A brokerage forecast suggests that if India were to completely stop buying Russian oil without sufficient alternative supply, global crude prices could climb toward $90 or even $100 per barrel. For India, higher crude prices translate directly into higher transportation costs, higher manufacturing costs, and higher food prices. In practical terms, this means costlier petrol and diesel, more expensive electricity, and rising prices for everyday goods. For ordinary households, it means a higher cost of living and shrinking purchasing power. For businesses, it means higher operating costs and lower margins. Ladies and gentlemen, energy is a fundamental input across the economy. When energy becomes more expensive, everything becomes more expensive. Factories face higher power bills. Farmers pay more for fertilizer and diesel. Logistics companies pay more for fuel. Exporters lose competitiveness. Already, some of India's export sectors are under pressure due to trade tensions and tariff uncertainties. If energy costs rise further, industries such as textile, leather, chemicals, and engineering goods could suffer additional setbacks. Job creation would slow, investment would hesitate, growth momentum would weaken. Government finances would also come under strain. When fuel prices rise, governments face a difficult choice. Either they increase subsidies to shield consumers, which widens the fiscal deficit, or they allow prices to rise, which angers voters and dampens economic activity. Both options carry political and economic costs. There is also a strategic dimension. India's heavy dependence on imported oil already makes it vulnerable to external shocks. Losing access to discounted Russian crude without a reliable, affordable alternative could reduce energy resilience. India could become more dependent on costlier supplies from the Middle East or the United States. That dependency increases strategic vulnerability. It limits policy autonomy. It exposes the economy to geopolitical turbulence far beyond India's control. This is why many analysts believe India's silence is not accidental. It reflects an attempt to balance competing pressures. On one side, India wants to maintain its growing strategic partnership with the United States. On the other hand, it cannot afford to sacrifice a key economic advantage. So New Delhi neither confirms nor denies Trump's claims. It insists that energy decisions are driven by national interest. In short, this is not just about oil. It is about inflation. It is about jobs. It is about growth. It is about the everyday cost of living for a billion people. The real question is whether India's silence represents careful strategy or quiet surrender, and how heavy the economic price tag could become in the months ahead. Now, let us turn to the other side of the border. While India struggles with ambiguity and pressure, Pakistan is projecting confidence, capability, and visibility. At the World Defense Exhibition in Riyadh, the Pakistan Air Force JF-17 Thunder fighter jet has emerged one of the most talked about platforms. Among aircraft from the United States, Saudi Arabia, and other major producers, the JF-17 has drawn strong interest from visiting delegations and defense experts. Observers have highlighted three key strengths. First, cost effectiveness. It offers modern capabilities at a fraction of the price of many Western fighters. Second, multi-role performance. The aircraft could conduct air-to-air combat, ground attack, and reconnaissance missions. Third, proven combat credibility. Following its performance during the Pakistan-India confrontation of the May 2025, the fighter jet demonstrated operational reliability in real-world conditions. This combination of affordability, flexibility, and combat experience makes the aircraft highly attractive to countries seeking capable air power without unsustainable costs. There is a growing interest, and the growing interest underscores Pakistan's expanding role as a defense exporter and reliable security partner, particularly among Muslim majority nations. At the Riyadh exhibition, Pakistan's defense minister Khaja Asif met with his Saudi counterpart. They discussed regional defense cooperation and praised the successful organization of the event. This engagement reflects Pakistan's proactive diplomacy in the defense domain. Instead of reacting to pressure, Pakistan is shaping its own narrative. Instead of ambiguity, Pakistan is offering clarity. Instead of silence, Pakistan is speaking through technology, capability, and partnerships. The contrast with India is striking. While New Delhi remains silent under pressure over a critical energy issue, Islamabad is confidently showcasing indigenous defense innovation. While India faces questions about energy sovereignty, Pakistan is reinforcing its strategic autonomy. While India navigates ambiguity, Pakistan projects credibility. This does not mean Pakistan is without challenges, but it does demonstrate an important reality. Nations that invest in self-reliance, diversify partnerships, and build indigenous capabilities gain leverage. They gain options. They gain voice. The broader lesson here is simple. In today's world, economic resilience and strategic autonomy are inseparable. Energy policy, defense production, and diplomacy are interconnected. Countries that surrender control over these pillars become vulnerable to pressure. Countries that strengthen them become harder to coerce. India's silence on Russian oil and Pakistan's rising defense profile represent two different approaches to navigating a complex global order. One reflects hesitation, the other reflects assertion. And in geopolitics, perception matters almost as much as power. I'm Makhdoom Shahabuddin and you're watching Trending Daily. See you in the next episode.